Peoples. Right, today's bit of news. While I'm sitting here on my own, which is a very rare occurrence. The goings on in Aleppo, which is seems, we seem to be told things in the news which don't seem right, and they don't appear right, and they seem to want to continue a war which really they should now be backing out of, and now leaving it be for um, the Syrians and for the Russians to actually now clear up and send aid and start sorting these things out. But as usual, of course, the West don't see it that way. They still continue their same rhetoric that Assad is not is the bad guy who's going around murdering his own people. It's absolutely crazy when you start really looking into the whole thing. And I've seen a video which I absolutely agree with, and I've had a few debates on with some friends in respects of all of that. And my opinion is that we are really very, very badly misled on the media, um, in the newspapers and everything. We're told that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, and we see another Libya happening where they really want to continue to um, a war until they finally killed their man, and they're not going to let up until that happens. And so there's all these snipers that you hear going off, and they're pointing the finger at Assad and saying that that's their people doing that. um, it's quite bizarre to me. They just want to continue a war because it pays to do so. We need to consider how we need to start getting hold of all of these things, because it's so muddled up. There's so much stuff that gets confused in the whole situation. We need to consider the questions that go on for better mental health, if nothing else, because it can send you totally batty, wondering what's truth and what's not truth. Asking yourself the big questions about life is linked to lower depression and anxiety. A new research I've seen finds people who don't resist existential concerns about the meaning of life have, it seems, better mental health. So perhaps if we took less notice of the lies that the media and the news tell us, that would be a start. There's so much lies spread, not so much in social media, although it is ultimately used to spread the word. But most of these lies, it's where they start, and they start in these newspapers among the trash journalism from the likes of the Sun or the Daily Mail, the Daily Fail, as I always like to call it. Um, I've lost that somewhere. There's apparently in one story, which was an absolute whopper of a lie, a gunman had walked into a pizza place in Washington, D.C. to investigate false news that they'd read, and they'd fired off at least one round. The gunman wanted to investigate a long running false news story stating that the pizza place was at the centre of a paedophile ring that was linked to Hillary Clinton. The story had spread and across a number of false news sites, and an aide to Donald Trump, who has since been fired, had even tweeted about the story. The problem here is the more people spread fake news on the net, the more muddled truth gets from facts, and we need a place that we can get to the facts. It's like life itself. It's impossible to know what truth is. It is so muddled up with make-up stories, and so it is that we can't call people out on being gullible anymore. We're all caught up in certain lies offered up to us daily, a lot of it deliberately put out there to make us believe that the whole of the internet offers up is nothing but fake news. Um, what two things could have prevented this? One would have been a demand for regulations on these newspapers and sites, and the second, of course, would be there's better gun control that needs to happen, really. So these stories wind someone up who has a gun, and this is the result. What on earth are we doing to ourselves? fear of confronting these type of questions, though, is linked to problems regulating the emotions. And when people avoid these struggles, anxiety and depression tend to be more intense than if they face these struggles head on. But add a gun to the mix and we're asking for trouble. Personally, I'm so glad that here in the UK we don't carry guns and we are no more in danger because of that. But we have a low crime rate compared to America. People being sent crazy by politics and political agenda carrying guns is a terrible idea. Besides that, there is the idea that religion is the problem. Yet it's scientifically proven that people who more fully embrace these struggles with fundamental beliefs and values seem to have a better mental health than those who don't. And it is the political mix with spirituality or religion that creates a tension, not a religious one. When we look at political groups such as those of the extreme right, many of those who were unwilling to consider spiritual struggles tend to be more close-minded to other groups such as those of different faiths. This avoidance may lead to the rejection of whole groups of people based on their religious differences or differences between their sexuality or gender-based identity and religious teachings. People seem to be more emotionally healthy if they're able to accept troubling thoughts. In other words, looking at spiritual doubts, it's a healthy thing to do. You may or may not work through them, but at least you can tolerate having them. Regularly pushing away existing thoughts will not stop them being troubling. Avoidance can make it difficult to identify or work towards or experience the qualities that lead to a sense of purpose of life. Continually being revisited by these thoughts can create strains in emotional health, especially if a person sees this kind of questioning as morally unacceptable and dangerous. Being open to your opinion is a healthy thing to do. I'm sharing my opinion here, and you have the option to share yours beneath or this video, or make a video of your own, of course. The problem with politics is there is always going to be disagreement. In democracy, there's always going to be the majority rule that we have to accept, even if we don't like what the majority has voted for, like the Brexit and the Trump vote in America. I disagree with the carrying of guns. I think most of the people of the UK would agree with me, but I know, having spoken to most of my American friends, their media has told them that we in the UK want guns. It only takes for one American to talk to one of the majority Britons who want to be able to carry a gun to conclude that all British people want to carry a gun. And we're being oppressed by laws that our media is lying, where it says that British people are happy with laws that disallows us to have guns. I feel safer in a world without all of these weapons. Thank you very much. It's funny where you can chat with certain people who advocate for nuclear weapons yet agree we can't carry guns, using the argument that it would cause more death on the streets, whilst arguing that if we were bombed by a certain country, we can use nuclear weapons in return, or that we need those arms as a deterrent. But don't we see that carrying guns is as a deterrent? We all have our personal disagreements. It's how we respond to those disagreements that creates a mutual agreement where one has to eventually back down, or the argument remains we agree to disagree. All healthy ways to communicate. When people are too heavily on how it makes them feel to be wrong, we have problems. We have to learn to regulate our emotions, especially those of feeling in the wrong. It's okay to be wrong from time to time. It may be a horrible feeling, but it is what learning is all about. The most successful men and women are fearless to be wrong. Take Trump, for instance. If you like him, or if you don't, he doesn't give two shits either way. He can do anything he wants, he can argue it because he has money. Hillary got to her position because of the saying, all money, money, money. And Trump has even now got to be the president of the United States. It doesn't matter if he threatens freedom of speech, civil rights, says out loud to a crowd to beat others that oppose him, threatens minorities, insults them, threatens the environment, which we recently now know he changed his mind on. Perhaps he's been better educated on that now. threatens the press and says very proudly that he could shoot people down in Times Square and get away with it, encourages assassination of his opponents, has ripped off his own workers, has 1,000,001 shady deals and destroys unions, hasn't cared about the environment, has tons of international real estate and international companies abroad that closes deals with foreign governments for his own benefit, will continue to, and has been known to study Hitler's speeches and says things that history has only heard dictators say. And he's packing the White House with militarily unqualified people and white supremacists because they are loyal. His wives are disposable toys. But, people, why are they not worried? He does get away with almost anything because he has money. But more importantly, it's because society is so shallow, uneducated, and misinformed. These people have basically voted in everything that they possibly hate, but they were told that they had only two choices. So it shows how hated Hillary was. And as I say, out of the two, I too would have voted Trump. But I'm aware that American people, if they all decided, no, we want to make our own stand, they would have all voted for a different party. And they had the chance to do that. One that was not blasted out there in the media as being their only two choices. Simple as that. It's not based upon principles, it's on how much money they have. And that's why I don't like either him or her. People can argue with me, hate me, delete me, and block me because I have an opinion. It won't make me change my opinion. Only that person can do that. If I see a new person emerge for whatever reason, only then will I change my mind. One thing that we have to do is stop disconnecting from each other because we don't like or like to feel wrong. When we're all fighting amongst each other, that's when we have lost. As citizens of the world, we are an army to be reckoned with. As an army of the world, fighting for our rights is not to be spied upon. We're losing our own way. We're continuing to lose because we are losing each other over petty arguments and disagreements. We judge people on race and religion and not individuality. Yet we judge a leader on individuality. We say, look at them from them over there, how bad they are and how wrong they are compared to us over here, and yet complain that I or someone else made a judgment of one man whilst making judgments of a whole race. Some blame the monarchy for a failing system as if other systems are working. Why don't we see that we are all divinely connected? Do you prefer the infighting that distracts people from their greater purpose? When people like Trump puts himself up for president, he puts himself up for scrutiny as an individual. Someone who wouldn't denounce the Ku Klux Klan out of his own mouth, his own words, stating he didn't know what they were about. What American person has a right to be in this position when that person doesn't know the politics or the agendas that can bring about so much hatred? But one thing is true, if you run your life according to a political agenda, then you're trapped in this illusion. Freedom comes from people power. When people have a choice, you think the Americans even knew they had a choice? Now, I fight for a candidate, Jeremy Corbyn, who fights for the rights for people to have a say, not for the lying, wicked system in power now. Now, I sure as hell wouldn't move to the USA right now unless it were to live in with the natives in a teepee. Those people are fighting to be free from the system that keeps them enslaved in the lie those who voted Trump or Hillary voted for. Here in the UK, when George Osborne launched his austerity programme in 2010, he promised short-term pain in return for long-term economic stability, stating that the country's deficit would be closed by 2015. He has failed. He has not only doubled the national debt, but after 6 years of crushing austerity, the UK's debt is worse than any time since records began in 1955. The Conservatives are only interested in short-term fixes. The problem is we judge a great country or not so great by its people or the talents of the people who live in those countries, but by how much money we have. Mayor Rothschild stated, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws." Those who call out anti-Semitic each time they are judged as being crooks and liars. So what's Semitic about the Rothschilds? European German Jews aren't Semitic. Palestinians and other Arab nations are Semitic. A religious persuasion doesn't make a Semite. Just Google Rothschilds control of central banks to find a trove of fascinating revelations. Look in your dictionaries for the correct definition of Semite. Control is the factor here, where you can't wear a burqa, where you can't wear your bikini, you can't be who you are, you need to be controlled, you cannot succeed. Now, I'm getting pretty weary of all the nonsense coming from newspapers like the Daily Mail with the endless whining and opinion about Corbyn being a problem. To be blunt, as a lifelong socialist, I find it insulting that Corbyn, a guy who has and who always had the temerity to stand up for peace, equality, and a basic human dignity, is being endlessly criticised by people who are simply incapable of thinking outside of the box. When Corbyn talked about a new style of politics, it was a deep proposition. If you're still in a conventional mindset, believing the only way to change is to stay the same, then I have no respect for you. What matters most is the future. It is the almighty dollar, it's the oil, it is trying to preserve Western capitalism. Or could it be world peace and harmony? I despair at the biased idiocy that abounds when people criticise Corbyn for standing up for what everyone wants in their hearts. We won't ever get there unless we make a start. The only way out is to go beyond this illusion and live your life in a way that can make you like who you are whilst trying to leave as little carbon footprint on the earth. We are all of us in this together, and we have to stop this infighting because it is a big distraction to keep you from knowing what's really going on. And finally, on Brexit, the European Chief Commissioner has said that the UK will have to pay £50 billion to trigger Article 50. I think this bunch of unelected EU dictators keeps making these conditions and threats and demands as they go along. If they want us out so quickly, why keep trying to scare us into staying in? Sooner out, the better. I'd tell them where to stick their threats. The way that they're treating the UK is absolutely disgusting, and we should just walk away and tell them all to kiss it, and just pull out of Europe and tell the Supreme Court to toe the line. It could all be done in 2 weeks and with not a cost. And watch who would come running. German industry is not going to accept their biggest buyer being turned away. Call their bluff. They say that they'll punish us for leaving, but they won't because they need us more than we need them. And it just needs other politicians to accept that what the British people want and get on with it. Now, I don't know if the EU publish funds paid in by member states and expenditure for the financial year, and further whether there are complete records of what each member paid in, how the funds were used, and where any surplus funds are held. If all audits then published and anomalies highlighted, investigated, and findings published, such as personal luxury goods, private travel, personal invested properties, cars and aircraft, and even haircuts, I would expect every member country has a budget, but a few have blown theirs. So how do they live from day to day? Does borrowing money from the EU members get charged interest? I wonder. Are there any outstanding debts over 3 years old from countries who received funds? When and where are the balance sheets published for the public who are nationals of a member state? That's something to think about, I think. Anyway, I'll leave it there. And thank you once again for listening. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.